Have you ever stopped to think about who we choose to honor on our military bases? It might seem like a small thing, a name on a sign, a tradition soldiers salute as they pass through the gates. But those names tell a story about what we value as a country. And recently, Senator Angus King delivered a moment in a congressional hearing that cut through all the political noise and forced everyone to face a hard truth. For decades, the United States has been honoring traitors. King grew up in Virginia, a place where Confederate General Robert E. Lee was once revered.
Senator King.
Mr. Secretary, I'm somewhat puzzled. I grew up in Virginia where Robert E. Lee was revered. I think when I was a kid, his birthday was a school holiday. But as I grew older and learned more about American history, I learned that he fit the classic definition of a traitor. He took up arms against his country. He broke his oath as a member of the United States Army, which he took upon entering his career at West Point. Why are you going through these incredible gymnastics, finding current soldiers or other soldiers to rename? And you slipped a minute ago. You said we're returning these bases to their original names. Robert E. Lee, leading general of the Confederacy, Pickett, the other names. Why are you doing this? I don't understand what the motivation is to rename bases for people who took up arms against their country on behalf of slavery. What possible motivation can there be for this? Who is telling you to do this? Who is urging you to do this?
Senator, the veterans and service members across the country who have deployed from Fort Bragg or Fort Benning or Fort Hood or Fort Pickett, there's a legacy, there's a connection to those bases and to those places, to what they trained for there, what they did for, and what they came home back to. That matters to them. Ask enough of them, as I do, all the time, before and later. And we recognize the service of those who were put into the replacement. No one's disputing that. I would never dispute that. What we're looking at is erasing history, erasing names, erasing base names that service members are tied to.
Talk
to people that serve at Bragg. Ask people that serve at Fort Bragg or Fort Benning if they like the fact that the names have been returned. And to a man and to a woman, they will tell you, thank God we're back to Fort Bragg, and thank God we're back. And thankfully, because so many men and women in this country have served, there's a Benning and a Bragg and a Pickett and a Hood has a Silver Star or a Medal of Honor that we could rename the base to because of the limits of what Congress allowed us to do. So this is something we've been proud to do, something that's important for the morale of the Army, and those communities appreciate that we've returned it back to what it was instead of trying to play this game of erasing names.
We're not erasing history, Mr. Secretary. We're recognizing history and recognizing that mistakes have been made in this country. The greatest of all was the Civil War, where people took up arms against their country on behalf of the institution of slavery. And to continue the practice of recognizing those people and honoring them by the naming of these bases is, I believe, an insult to the people of the United States. Let me talk about the budget. I don't understand why the budget is coming to us in two pieces. Why not give us an honest base budget instead of putting a piece of it in reconciliation? As I understand it, OMB is saying we're going to have a flat defense budget for the next 4 or 5 years. Are we planning reconciliation every year from now on? Why not give us an honest budget telling us what your priorities are, and then we can consider it. This committee always works in a bipartisan basis on a defense budget. We all want to see some increases in the defense budget, and yet you're giving us this, this fake, here's a piece of the budget, here's another. You're cutting, in the base budget, you're cutting shipbuilding in half and saying, well, we're going to make it up in reconciliation. Are we going to have reconciliation every year, which basically, by the way, puts a significant part, 10 or 15% of the defense budget in a wholly partisan decision-making process, whereas in the history of this committee, it's always been bipartisan. Why are we doing it this way?
Senator, from our view, the budget number 961 meets the requirements and threats that we face. And
That's not the number. The number is 892.6. You're adding reconciliation. That's my whole point. Why not give us a base budget of 961 or whatever the right number is, what you consider the right number, and then we can operate and make our decisions. Why do it in this bifurcated way that really is fooling the American people about what the defense budget is?
We're not trying to fool anybody, sir. It's two bills, one budget. We're working with OMB, and we feel very comfortable with the number of 961 billion.
Why don't you give us a straight-up budget for the Defense Department? That's my question.
Senator, this is a straight-up budget for the Defense Department, and it's a 13% increase over what Joe Biden gave us.
It is a two-part defense budget. Part of it is in reconciliation instead of in the budget that's being presented to this committee. This committee only has a partial review of the budget. I don't understand why we can't have an honest, straightforward budget instead of this son of Oko that you're putting over on us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He even remembers a time when Lee's birthday was a school holiday. But as he got older, he came to a startling realization. Robert E. Lee wasn't just a Southern hero wrapped in nostalgia. He fit the very definition of a traitor. He was a U.S. Army officer who swore an oath to the United States, and then he broke that oath. He led an armed rebellion against the country he once served, all in defense of slavery. Think about that for a second. This man took up arms against the United States. He waged war to preserve human bondage. And yet for generations we've had bases named after him and other Confederate generals training today's American soldiers under the shadow of men who literally turned their backs on the country. That's not heritage. That's treason dressed up as nostalgia. During the hearing, Senator King pressed the point. He asked why the Department of Defense had spent years performing gymnastics to find new names for these bases, as if this decision was complicated. He asked the obvious question, why are we still debating whether to stop glorifying enemies of the United States? Why would we keep honoring people who took up arms against their country to protect slavery? The response from the defense side was familiar. They said renaming the bases could hurt morale. That soldiers who trained and served at Fort Bragg or Fort Benning or Fort Hood felt a deep emotional connection to those names. They warned that renaming the bases might feel like erasing history. But let's break that argument down. Nobody is erasing history. Lee, Hood, and the rest of the Confederacy will always be in the history books. The Civil War happened. Their betrayal happened. What's changing is who we choose to honor with taxpayer-funded monuments. If the bond soldiers feel to a base is rooted only in the name of a man who fought against the United States, maybe it's time to think about what that bond really represents. Military service isn't just about loyalty to a unit, it's about values. And keeping Confederate names on federal property doesn't honor our service members, it undermines the very principles they fight for. It sends a message that betrayal can be excused if enough time passes, that treason can be romanticized as heritage. That's not patriotism. That's historical gaslighting. Senator King didn't stop there. He pushed back hard against the idea that removing Confederate names was some form of erasing history. He said it outright, the Civil War was the greatest mistake in American history, when people took up arms against their own country for the institution of slavery. Continuing to honor those people is an insult to the United States, and to every soldier who has actually defended it.
Oh.
And then the hearing took another turn into something most Americans never see, the messy reality of how the defense budget is crafted. King zeroed in on the way the Defense Department split the budget into two parts, a base budget and a reconciliation package.
On the surface, it might seem like boring accounting.
But King exposed how this tactic hides the true size of the defense budget and moves 10 to 15% of it into a highly partisan process. Instead of a clear, honest presentation of what our military needs, Congress gets a shell game. Some of the most powerful spending decisions in government are buried in procedural tricks that avoid the normal bipartisan process of the Armed Services Committee. King called it what it is, fooling the American people. He said, why can't we get an honest, straightforward budget? If the real defense budget is $961 billion, why present $892 billion and tuck the rest into reconciliation? If the Pentagon's priorities are sound, they should stand up to daylight. This matters for more than just accounting. Defense budgets are about national security, troop readiness, and long-term strategy. When billions are hidden behind gimmicks, accountability disappears, and without accountability, waste and politics fill the gap. King's demand was simple: give us the real number, give us the real plan, and let Congress do its job in a bipartisan way. In that single hearing, King exposed two uncomfortable truths about how America deals with its military. First, we've spent generations honoring traitors under the guise of heritage, sending a message that the values of the Confederacy could share a pedestal with the values of the Union. Second, we've been letting defense budgets turn into political games, where transparency takes a back seat to optics. Both issues come down to the same principle: honesty. Honesty about our history. Honesty about our priorities. Honesty about what and who we choose to honor as a nation. The takeaway from Senator King's questioning is clear. If we truly believe in the values America claims to represent, loyalty, freedom, equality, then we can't keep clinging to Confederate names as though betrayal deserves a monument. And if we truly care about a strong national defense, we can't keep playing shell games with the Pentagon's budget. This isn't about left versus right, it's about moral clarity and fiscal responsibility. It's about looking at the signs on our bases and the numbers in our budgets, and asking, do these choices reflect the America we say we believe in?
Ooh.
If they don't, then the path forward is simple. Rename the bases, honor the soldiers who served under the flag, not those who turned against, and demand a defense budget that is honest, transparent, and accountable. Because if we can't face the truth about our history, or our spending, what exactly are we defending? If you believe it's time to stop celebrating traitors and start demanding honesty in how our country operates, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more breakdowns like this one. Your voice matters, and together we can push for a country that actually lives up to its ideals.